morning. Welcome to Study School's Stay Connected and Learn series. Our first guest in this series is none other than Ishi Khosla, who is a clinical nutritionist. She's an author. She's an entrepreneur. And of course, you all know about Funfood. That whole platform offered an option of healthy eating. So it's not just about choosing your ingredients, it's also choosing your nutrients, and that's what Whole Foods brought to the fore. Now, working with little children, one realizes that what starts at the root goes to the shoot. And we've been doing root and shoot with the children. So I must say, if the root is strong and well grounded, which means that the children know about environmental consciousness, they know about how to deal socially, emotionally, and most importantly, nutritionally. Because what you put in is what is going to come out. So if we don't have our children eating right and eating in a way that it helps them through their life, remember at this stage, whatever is given to them, it's the foundation. The bones are formed, the body is formed, and most importantly, something that we all tend to miss, the mind is formed. The relationship between food and mental health is immense. So we are going to talk to Ishi Khosla, who is an authority on the subject, not only because she studied it and she's set up institutions and done a lot of welfare work through this field, but also and primarily because she's deeply passionate about this field. Now, for our children, what should they have? What should they not have? What should children's plates have? What should they eat? And how much should they eat? Ishi, welcome to the Study School Stay Connected and Learn series.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk to the parents on a subject which, yes, I'm passionate about, but I think um, it should be equally important, if not more, for parents to understand the importance. And what you just said cannot be more correct about how what you eat will determine who your child will be and how your child is going to shape up. And those words of wisdom really, I think, should be shared by every parent and there is no exaggeration here. The more you do, the better it is. Of course, there are issues of getting over conscious and over controlling. That's a different situation. But yes, the importance of what goes into the child's plate and his mouth and what happens to that food later in his body is absolutely critical. So I
We have a
just
lot of questions, Rishi, but I'll ask you first to start out with just common things. You know, how you think children are misbehaving or children are not towing the line and what that food and child relationship may be.
Oh, absolutely. You're bang on there. And before I go there, I just want to, and because we spoke about the importance of child from conception, which means right from pregnancy, that can impact the child as an adult, both mentally and physically. The health of of a individual can be determined by what the mother ate in those days and what the mother fed the child in the first 2 years. And brain development ceases after 2 years. So whatever you want to do, whether it is food, nutrition, stimulation, you can intervene up to 2 years. So that is really a critical time. So that's what I said, that you can't be more right, Shivani, when you made that introduction. And I think while parents today, I have a grandson who is a part of the study group, and so I'm equally involved these days in seeing the issues which happen, and also with my two kids, whatever I experienced, there is a lot of learning, and it's not as maybe as simple as it used to be a few generations ago. And yes, food has changed. When I say that, it also is about the environment changing, the food changing, and those changes impacting our bodies. So sometimes we're eating right, we are doing the right things, but we are not getting the same kind of outcome. We are not getting the same results. And the mothers who are most conscientious find that the children are refusing to eat, or yet, even though they're eating, they're not feeling as good as they should be, and there are issues both mentally, physically, and that's when, like you just said, the relationship with food can get distorted. We have to get down to, so just a very simple example, a fussy child can be just labeled as a fussy child, and oh, he's got tantrums, and but we need to understand where it's coming from. Why is this child not enjoying or eating the foods according to his age or according to what he should be eating? Again, what should be eating also needs to be defined. I mean, it could be customized, it could be different from the person to person, but by and large, if you are violating the basic, principles of nutrition, the child is only eating or drinking milk or one kind of food, you know that there's a problem. And we now need to...
Milk, milk is a very huge concern for parents.
Yes.
But yes, when you're talking about this whole thing of the child's behavior depending on what they're eating, I think also a lot of parents are concerned about how much they're eating and probably not realizing that the size of the child is also different. So I think when you
Exactly.
spoke about the 1,000-day window, the up to the first 2 years starting from conception, just quickly, if you can give us 5 points of what a mother should have to benefit the child during conception. Then since milk is of such concern, coming to milk, mother's milk, and then we'll come to the milk concerns of the 2, 3, 4-year-olds.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I'll just get there. And basically, what I was coming to was that we can actually ruin the relationship of it with food, with the child when we are force feeding the child. Instead of doing that, we should actually get down to understanding why it's happening. And we have now tools to, there are red flags, and we can kind of intervene and get blood tests done, and we can get these are things which are not really happening with pediatricians today, with general, the practitioners of medicine, and that really is not happening. And I think there is need to look at that as well. So we will go into more specifics, but this was just to tell you that, that eating can be challenging, and once the environment, and remember that not every child is the same. So I know that everyone likes to hear what should we do. But sometimes when you know what you should do, and I also believe that most mothers intuitively know what to do. They have a sixth sense, and that maternal instinct is so strong, we should never dismiss it. But yet it's not working. So the thing is that what basically understanding food is best done when you understand the food groups, which is cereals, which is all your grains, your roti chapati, and your paranthas and pizzas and breads and whatever. And then you have your pulses, which are your proteins and carbs. Then you have vegetables and fruits, and then you have your animal proteins and your the eggs, meat and milk, and fish, etc. And you have the nuts and the seeds, which are the fats. So these are really 5 groups, and to get optimum nutrition, you really need all these 5 groups. Barring maybe sometimes we are partial to cereals, you can bypass the cereals and choose pulses instead, or reduce the cereals. But at the same time, these are important, and how much of cereal you take, when you take, what cereals you choose are critically important. So the number one thing is to ensure that the mother is not going to gain too much weight. That's an important issue. And more than 10, 12...
Olden days was not really considered, but today I think mothers are quite conscious.
Yes. And I have to here bring about a whole concept of food sensitivities and antibodies in the womb. Somewhere we are aware that the allergies in food, from food in children, has gone up by over 50% in the last few years. That's huge. That's really huge. What is also alarming is, I'm not here to give you data, but it is something which will connect the dots for you. We'll be able to understand what's going on. Autism. And Shivani, this is a disturbing stat here. 1 in 10,000 20 years ago. That was how rare autism was. And today, you cannot even guess where we are with autism. 1 in 59. and it is expected to go down to 1 in 40 and 1 in 30 in the next few years.
Why is she? Why is this so
Yes,
horrific?
so this is the reason why I said, we all know what to eat, but still it's not working. There are issues, and we need to get oriented with a whole new concept of the gut and the gut microbiome and what is happening to the microbiome thanks to the environment that we are in. And that affects a woman in during pregnancy far more than any time other than that. I mean, women actually are far more prone to issues in the environment because of their hormonal changes. And in pregnancy, we see those hormonal changes. So the issue in pregnancy, basically, when I say that, is the gut undergoes changes, and there's a change in the gut microbiome. And if we are getting food sensitivities, they can manifest in forms of extra sickness, or some kind of nagging complaints in or just blood pressure or increase in blood sugars. These are red flags for a woman during pregnancy to watch, to look out and test for.
So I think what Ishi's saying is that it's not that you have to panic, but you do have to look out for the red flags and take corrective actions as and when those problems emerge, and not just think it's okay, I'm pregnant, I'm allowed to have this situation.
Exactly. So do check with your nutritionist to look at food sensitivities, because these antibodies cross the placenta and enter the body. And when they enter the baby's body, which means an unborn, when the baby is born with these antibodies, we are more prone to developing what we call autoimmune problems, like I said, mental health issues, autism, ADHD, attention. You must be seeing all these problems, dyslexia, the neurodegenerative issues. So they're coming very early, and they're coming on in large numbers, more than we could ever imagine. So the idea is not to just treat pregnancy like the way it used to be. Our environment has changed hugely, and all of this is affecting what we call the gut microbiome, the little trillions of bacteria which sit in our gut and control our entire body in every way. Literally, in every way, from my head to toe, every cell is controlled by these gut microbiomes. So there are all these I would say relatively new concepts which are emerging and impacting. And we know that when we are intervening with the correctives, we are finding huge changes. For instance, if I have a food sensitivity and I'm taking out those elements like dairy and the grains which are inflammatory, or some other foods, we find complete changes in the personality, or the issues that we are dealing with. The appetite comes back, and the behavior changes, the irritability, and the child calms down. All that happens. And and even in autism, the diet which is recommended is basically recommended means which can actually make a difference between an autistic child and a non-autistic child. A normal child is a gluten-free and a casein-free diet. It's called a GFCF diet. So somewhere we know that these are big issues which are emerging, and I think young parents today should not look at it as a fad or a fashion statement. These are real issues, and then we need to go deeper into them and dwell.
There's our lovely Samaira, whose mother Ramandeep Kaur is saying, "How do I encourage my daughter to drink milk from a glass and not a sipper?" Then we have Polki's mum, Dolly Jain. She's saying, "My daughter left the bottle when she was just 6 months old, and since then she's only taking milk in the form of porridge or shakes, and that too not very regularly." So because of this, and also her speed with the glass is very, very slow. She has like a fourth of a glass in her.
Yeah.
So that's a bit troublesome for her. And she also wants to know how much milk is necessary for a 3-year-old baby in a day. Should I ask you all the milk questions, or do you want to answer these and then I ask more?
Okay, let's pause and let's answer these and then go further. So yes, let's look at the slow drinking of milk. The graduation is best done with a teaspoon. So you can start feeding. They didn't mention the child's age though.
3.
The same 3 for all of them. Okay. So yes, start with the so tablespoon start with that, and gradually the child will get fed up of being fed with a tablespoon, and then you can put the glass. So that transition is not so difficult. If the child is generally okay, then about 2 to 3 servings of dairy are good. But for mothers whose child or children do not accept milk, like milk, or they have a problem or refuse to have milk, they should not panic, and alternatives to milk are there. Yes, we need to supplement with calcium, we need to supplement with the vitamin D in any case. So that angle is to be looked at by the nutritionist or the pediatrician, that if they are taking alternatives to milk, then calcium intake has to be maintained through supplements. One very important thing, when I spoke about the gut microbiome, the issue goes back to absorption of nutrients also. They control, the gut microbiome controls how much of the nutrient that you're eating you're going to absorb, and which is what we are seeing today is not happening. We are having kids eating, and even obese kids having absolutely rock bottom levels of nutrients like vitamin D, iron, magnesium, B12. And so we know that we are not making the most of the food that we are eating. So do check out early, and particularly anemia and iron deficiency is critical for brain development. The listening audience must here focus on iron as an important issue. If your pediatrician is not asking for a blood test, please do it yourself or request them to write. We need to address iron levels. Anemia, even if it is borderline anemia, can affect the brain development. So please, just because you're feeding a great diet and the child is eating, you may be still malabsorbing. So it is important to have early intervention, and iron supplements need to be given. You don't have to wait for the child to get pale or to have the look of being anemic and then get a test done. So basic nutritional assessments must be made early in life. So going back to the issue of milk, too much of milk also will lead to iron deficiency, because the child will not be eating adequate amounts of normal food. And I think 2 to 3 servings for an average child is okay. But if your child has just 2 or just 1 or even none, please don't panic. There are options. So
Okay.
I believe my answer to that.
There is panic there. I'm going to go back to more milk, but you raised a very important question about absorption. Are there any key points, like why is absorption an issue?
Like I was trying to focus on the gut microbiome, they determine whether we are going to pick up the nutrients or no. And if the gut microbiome is disturbed, they also make certain nutrients in the gut for us, like particularly vitamin B12. So a lot of vegetarians say, we will not have enough because we don't have animal food. That's not true, because they have these little bugs who make it. We all animal bodies make our own vitamin B12. And if there is a problem in the gut microbiome, we are not going to be able to make the most of that. So it's very important to have a healthy gut microbiome. And for that, the issue of probiotics also comes in. How do we ensure that we have a good microbiome? The importance of, you have all these things now, Yakult, and you have these other probiotic curds and products in the market. Please give those to your child to ensure that the gut remains healthy, and you are able to achieve a balance of the gut microbiome.
So is she at the study
Yeah,
school very particular about environmental issues? So rather than go to a market and get a nice probiotic, is a yogurt good enough?
that's a wonderful question. Um, okay, so scientifically, it does not qualify as a probiotic. The definition of a probiotic is that the bacteria should reach the gut in a form and a concentration which is defined. And in yogurt, that does not happen. It does not really qualify as a probiotic unless it is a probiotic curd which you're buying from the market, which has been which has been produced with probiotics at a certain concentration and tested that it reaches the gut at that concentration. So in that sense, it's not a probiotic, but it definitely can help to promote the growth of healthy bacteria in the gut, which is what we call a prebiotic. So
So if
prebiotics.
for someone who doesn't want to go overboard and be panicking, I need probiotics, I need this, that, a cup of yogurt is a good enough home remedy?
Yes, it changes the pH and it has have a prebiotic benefit like fermented foods do. And there are lots of these things which are now being talked about, kombucha and kefir and all of these things. So yeah, they do have that benefit of giving you the boost in making the good bacteria in your gut.
So if kids were to be given kombucha, how much?
Depends on the age, but even small shots are good enough.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so this our 3-year-old Suhani, her mother Ashima Sehgal is asking that her daughter gets a loose tummy when she has milk. So she believes that she might be lactose intolerant, but Suhani keeps asking for milk, and Ashima feels really bad to say no. So what should she do? How can she substitute?
So here is a red flag. The child is rejecting something. Does she get loose stools with paneer and cheese and curd?
So she said, we believe she's lactose intolerant, though she has curd, Yakult, etc. I've tried other milks like soya, lactose free, but she didn't like its taste. She asked repeatedly for milk. So what are the other substitutes?
The other substitutes could be almond milk or coconut milk, and you even get rice milk. So she's a candidate for going deeper into the food intolerance test.
Okay.
You know, she may be not only reacting to lactose, she may be reacting to the milk protein. So therefore, she must do a food intolerance test to understand why she's getting the symptom, and so early in life. Because we do get lactose intolerance sometimes in children as well, but and they do overcome it, but it's nice to know what's happening. And almond milk is a good substitute.
Yes, you suggested that for my daughter, and she's quite enjoying it. She's not missing Starbucks with the lockdown because of the almond milk. Something which she really thinks is a good match.
Yeah. It is wonderful.
Tell you that she's not just here because she's this great entrepreneur and person who organizes international conferences on celiac disease and has speakers from all over the world and talks about issues which really haven't been brought up. She's here because I have personal faith. My daughter was suffering and she has allergies, and I took her to Ishi. And I think it took many years for her because, unlike your kids, she's not 2 or 3 or 4, and she really had to take the onus herself. But when she did, there have been tremendous results. So I'm talking to you as a mother, not as part of the study school infrastructure and admin, but as a parent, and that's how we have Ishi here. So Ishi, another parent, Prangna, who's adorable little Aryan, he does not drink milk. She's tried everything. Porridge, cereal, milkshake. He enjoys paneer, curd, cheese, so she gives him that. But she really wants him to have at least half a glass of milk a day. You know, the mother needs the child to have half a glass of feeling.
So I think she can just add flavoring. It could be a little chocolate. It could be a little bit of fruit, a mango, or just be a little creative and imaginative with changing the palate taste, and so that there is acceptance. And I do see that working very often. And don't be so paranoid about. Sometimes, like I said, while control is good, too much control is also not required. Oh, that's sugar, and I will not give sugar. And yes, please avoid sugar. Go bring it down to as little as possible, but natural sugars don't deny the sweet palate to the child. So it could be just dates, it could be figs, it could be jaggery or honey, or just fresh fruits and berries. So just do that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because some parents have this whole thing of, not many, but some do, the paranoia of not introducing sweet to the palate at all, because then they feel if it's not introduced, then the taste won't develop. So what's your take on that?
I buy that completely.
Oh, you
but
do?
I mean, up to first year of age, there is no need for it.
Okay.
And if you are able to deal with it, like I said, it doesn't include the natural sweetness of foods. And but yes, if you can do without it, nothing like it. You don't need that sugar. Absolutely not.
Ishi, when they talk about sugar being the new cholesterol, is how much do you believe in that? And
Oh,
how
I see. It's a whole concept which I can't help talking to you about, because I I cannot do a superficial job. So I have to go down to the bottom and tell you that cholesterol, or high cholesterol for that matter, to be accurate, is a consequence of inflammation in the body. And so, because animal bodies make cholesterol for a reason, we all produce cholesterol. Our liver makes cholesterol for a reason. It has functions to perform. But when their body is under assault, or there is too much inflammation, being a protective component or an element of our body, the body physiologically responds by making more, because it is protecting you. So it is a response of inflammation and something faulty outside. There are other reasons also, but primarily that's the genetic reasons as well. So anything which is going to be inflammatory. Now, sugar is inflammatory to the gut. I told you about the gut microbiome. They do not like sugar because it feeds the bad bacteria, the wrong unkind bacteria, which are pathogenic. So therefore, sugar, like I said, was not a great should not be a great part of food. And sugar, if because it disturbs the gut microbiome, it leads to inflammation and therefore the cholesterol issue. So yes, the link between dietary cholesterol and eating cholesterol and your high blood cholesterol has been busted. So which means it's not about if you eat high cholesterol food that your cholesterol will go up. It means that you eat wrong food that your cholesterol will go up. So yes, sugar is in that category. And there are several other foods. They're like toxic fats, trans fats. Mothers, please know the word trans fats. If you haven't heard of it, do read about it. Trans fats are highly inflammatory and toxic fats, which the food industry supplies to you in abundance and generously. These fats can disturb your children's digestive system, the gut microbiome, and cause havoc. All the biscuits and the fancy bakery products which are available in the market commercially are laced with trans fats. They have tons and tons, and now it's mandatory for a food company to label the levels of trans fats. Please make sure that if you want to if you want to give bakery, bake for the child at home. Make healthy bakery. Use butter, use ghee, use virgin coconut oil, use olive oil, use sesame oil, whatever, but use unprocessed, cold pressed, natural fats. Give them avocados. One very important message here is good fats are extremely important for the brain development. So do not get phobic like you are about sugar, but do not have a fat phobia for your children. Give them at least 40 to 50% fat in their diet from good fats. It could be nut butters, it could be avocados. If avocados is really something which is not native to India, but now it's available and kids are liking it. So go ahead. Coconut is a wonderful fat, and a wonderful fat for the brain, for the gut as well. And all the butters and the desi ghees, please give them in abundance to your child. If you want a good brainy child, make sure you not only give these fats but also give what we call the omega-3 fats. These are the fats which are found in fish, and these fats are also found in flax seeds, in chia seeds. They're also found in green leafy vegetables. So just look at the way the Japs eat and the way the Bengalis eat. They have a lot of green leafy vegetables and a lot of fish. So if you're a vegetarian, you have options, but ensure that these fats are there in your child's diet if you want the child to have an anti-inflammatory, brain boosting diet.
See, we've just got a question saying, can we give jaggery to children under 1?
Yes, why not? It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
The yes for the jaggery?
No, in general, going back to the basics.
Yes, it does. Don't go buying goodies in the shops that are beautifully decorated and nicely marketed. Make something with your child. It's also a tremendous bonding. In fact, in our virtual learning program, the online classes which we have, ma'am, dad, mom, and me, it's all about getting the dads and mums and grandparents involved with the children, whether they're making flag sandwiches or a milkshake or even a laddu, which
Mm.
should be a treat and not a daily menu item. At
Yeah.
itself, when we have new kids come for admissions, then the director, the founding director, she always had a little something to engage with the child, a little treat. And we have now changed that treat to raisins, simply because we want to inculcate, not just by saying, children, it is good to eat this, but to
Mm.
make it part of the ethos of the school, encourage
That
tiffins as well. So we'll come to tiffins, but I have one more question, which is about nuts and milk. So it is here. So Swati Juneja, that's Tarini's mom, she says her daughter doesn't really like milk. So she gives her a lot of nuts, but then she's worried because she doesn't want to give them every day because nuts are heating. So what do you have to say about that?
well, how you take the nuts is important. So, in fact, the best cooling drink in summers is thandai, which is made with almonds. But what you have to do is to ensure that you soak the nuts before you give them in summers.
Okay.
So, soak your nuts and give them and grind them, and
How does
so
grind
you
help?
can eat. Grinding helps in better absorption of the nutrients. Just
So,
like chewing helps by better breaking down into smaller particles, better absorption. So the same logic.
so you're saying grinding because the children may not be trusted with chewing it 32 times?
Mm, yeah, but also the other reason for young children is because they can choke.
But I mean, part of the fun of a nut is the crunch.
Yeah, so it is, since there have been instances, so it's always, you have to watch your child when you're giving nuts and ensure that they sort of chew it well. But those are the guidelines. Children under 5 should not be given nuts. That was the reason, because of the choking. So
So
just be careful. Yeah.
the thing that Swati was asking is, can she take almonds, pista, walnuts? So any preferences for seasons or what?
So that's a great question, because it helps me highlight an important principle of healthy eating, which is variety. What a pistachio gives you, an almond doesn't give you, and vice versa. And what a cashew gives you, probably the almond doesn't give you. So and the omega-3s are loaded in the walnuts, which are not there in the others. So ensure that you do a variety. There is no super food and the best nut and the best vegetable and the best grain. Get out of that habit. And that takes me to the question on grains. Don't be only wheat centric or rice centric. So you can do one day ragi, one day bajra, one day jowar, one day quinoa, one day rice, and one day a combination. So, or one day amaranth. Do different grains different days, and that makes so much sense in terms of nutrition. It helps your digestion, and of course you get the benefit of all of these.
I never realized when Ishi talked about wheat being something that we were not meant to consume so much of. And I was like, if you can't have wheat ki bread and wheat ki chapati, then what? But almond flour is not as exciting, but ragi flour. Then there's quinoa. So not just using different mediums, but also then automatically new recipes come onto the table, because a nice quinoa salad, which we've served at the school on some of the parent-teacher get-togethers.
Wow.
So those are all coming from you, Ishi. The Gyan filters down, and I'm
I'm so glad. That's gratifying at a different level.
yes. Okay, so here is Samaira's mom saying we're vegetarian, but we eat eggs. In summers, I prefer not to give eggs to my 3-year-old daughter. So, what all should I include in her daily diet to fulfill her protein requirement?
In India, we are so blessed to have what we have called the beans, the lentils. They are just so good in terms of nutrition and as meat substitutes. So go ahead and give all the chickpeas, chanas, kala chanas, the lobias, and make patties out of them. Make the charts out of them. Um, they're the best substitute. And of course, now we have quinoa also as a protein source. And if your child eats dairy, then you have so much variety anyway.
So, Shraddha, I hope that answers your question for Shambhavi as well. The whole
And
thing is we've got a
they're all
fantastic.
sources of fat and proteins.
Yes. So that's great. How to boost a toddler's immunity? This is what Shraddha has asked. That's again from Shambhavi's house.
Okay, so again, I'll have to go back, rewind to the microbiome. And in fact, we have shared that video. I hope
The video your talk so that the parents can.
yes. So that kind of answers everything. So look at the child's digestion and ensure that the child is not bloated, is not constipated. These are all red flags. If the child has a bloat, if it's gassy, if it's constipated, etc., etc. If you have loose motions, anything which is faulty with your digestion or some other niggling problems, they need to be addressed. And going back to the gut, give your child probiotics, you will boost the immune system. And of course, ensure that they have adequate levels of nutrition like micronutrients, vitamin D, magnesium, etc., etc. So do your checks and balances.
So our adorable Manvi, when she came to us, her eating habits were quite unique, and now Manpreet, her mum, is very conscious, and she wants you to suggest her healthy eating habits for
Healthy
children.
eating. Ah,
Habits.
yeah. So what is important for healthy eating habits is variety, moderation, which means portion control, and balance. So if your child has eaten or messed up, eaten something wrong, then ensure that you compensate by not giving that food or making a better meal subsequently. So that's a very simple concept of balancing. If you've given, say, treats like too much of sugar, so maybe you can cut out the fruit for a few days or for a meal or 2 meals, depending on what's happened. So that's balance. Moderation is everything okay, but portion control. So that's about that. And variety, I already shared with you. That importance of having all the food groups and in the right variety within the food groups. So those are such simple things. And ensure that the colors, for instance, in vegetables, that's all the, the rainbow colors. Ensure that your child has vegetables and fruits in different colors every day, and make it fun. And talk about these things so the child also relates to them. And you can also do it in your course, whatever you're doing these days with the holidays. So the colors, and equate them with the food and the benefits, because every color has a unique pigment, and that pigment is a unique antioxidant for the body. So the red has its own benefits and the purple its own. Veer, can I have you here?
That would be a
Hi.
nice.
Oh, he's not dressed yet. Doesn't matter. He can come for a minute and he
Yes,
can meet Shivani.
our children are
Yeah,
always best if they're wearing their smile. That's all they need.
yeah, bring him, Gayatri. Just bring him. Shivani is here. Yeah. So that's the concept in terms of in vegetables. And I think ensuring that you chew your food well, that's important. The habit of what time you eat is important. So what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat is also important. So don't load up your last meal at for even for an adult, and the same with the children. And just don't force feed a child. That is another. So when you have a fussy child, you kind of just get on to the, and I've done it in my own case, and I realized that it just destroys the relationship between the mom and the child and the food.
True.
So it's not worth it.
And
um,
this is sad, by the way.
so
Ah,
we have little Veer. Say hi. Ah, you didn't have class today, Saturday. Oh,
can I give you an online hug, please? Please?
online hug. Oh, see?
Thank you so much.
Hi. Hi. Bye. He's busy on his scooter. Mm.
Yes. So, what I was saying is, Raghav, who's Katyayani's dad, he's amazing because like when moms come to check out a school, sometimes both parents come. But Raghav is certainly the kind of father who has given a lot of time and attention to little Katyayani, and she's full of joy and a bundle of laughs. but he's concerned that she is having like half a paranthi. So the same thing about the quantity. So to stop or to restrain, you've already answered that. But maybe even just some proportion guidelines, because sometimes we forget that if we have a full paranthi and we are 6 feet tall, then the children are just that much. So perhaps if you could tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, there is no hard and fast. As long as the child is, the growth parameters are okay, and the child is, like you said, active. There is no there is no weight issue as such. I wouldn't worry about it because the child is obviously getting his nutrition, and like we spoke about, the microbiome also determines how much food is absorbed, and depends on your genes as well. So don't fret about that. As long as the vegetables and the fruits and the fats are there in adequate quantity, the cereals is something which can be adjusted by the body, and even by the child. So it's okay. If he's hungry, he'll ask. And also, if they're not interested in paranthas, they can be, we have this obsession with grains and cereals. So you can get wonderful carbohydrates from sweet potatoes, and other starches like jackfruit and arbi, and so you don't have to be worried about it.
You can nice shakar kandi ki chaat or something.
Yeah.
I think because the aloo chaat is the traditional one, but I find that correct me if I'm wrong, but aloo on its own boiled is a superfood, and the minute you touch a drop of oil to it, its whole composition changes. Is that correct, Ishi?
Not quite.
I mean, does it become suddenly the backbone of fat and
Not at all. Not at all.
would you like to tell us a little bit about potatoes and their consumption?
Yeah, potatoes are wonderful, especially like I go back to the gut again and again, and they help foster healthy bacteria. They are good starches, and so they, whether it's sweet potatoes or potatoes, they all are useful for your system and for carbohydrates, and they don't have any inflammatory, proteins, etc. So they don't hurt your gut. They're hypoallergenic and easy to digest. So I wouldn't, put them out of a child's diet. And even if you add loads of butter or oil, it's even better.
Wonderful. That's a great one that you've given us. Now, here is Tanu. Veronica is another bundle of joy, but she gets constipated frequently, and he's been giving her cucumber, and that's not really working. So, what else can
Sorry?
she? Tanu has been giving her cucumber.
I read that question. Yes. Yes. No. The issue of constipation is a very, very strong suggestion. She should get a food intolerance test. A child should not be constipated, and I've had such dramatic changes in constipation with children with just elimination diets. So maybe she can also consult with me, but first she can get the intolerance test done.
Okay. Okay. And what about water intake?
I mean, I am assuming, because she said that she's working on it and so she's giving vegetables, the diet is not bad overall. If the diet is overall wrong, then first step is that. And if it continues to be, then this is what she needs to do. And I must share this case. 100% breastfed child was severely constipated, and it should not have been. And we did the elimination diet with the mother, and 2 days, constipation as severe as the child going once a week, passing stool, corrected in 2 days, just by elimination through the mother.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, in an adult, probably you'd look at water intake and things like that. How significant is that in children?
Equally.
So how much water for children? How many, what kind of liquid intake?
I would say the child should be taking, I think, hydration through fluids. We won't talk about water. Children need not drink water, but about average should be about 3 to 4 cups easily. I mean, again, it depends from child to child and season to season and weather to weather.
Okay, coming back to the jaggery question here, mothers are asking. So Neha is saying, how much jaggery can we give to a 3-year-old because his son loves it. Also, with summer coming, is Jaggery a good idea?
I wouldn't be terribly stressed about the summer and jaggery issue. And yes, if anything is too much, then there is something we need to. But what is too much is needs to be defined. So I would say if the overall child's diet is okay, and you also offer sweets in other forms, that will be one way of cutting back on the jaggery. But obviously, this child likes sweets.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah. So you need to understand that you have to. If there is no problem, we continue. If there's a problem in the sense that if the child is hyperactive or something odd, then we cut back. So I wouldn't be terribly stressed. But in terms of a number of teaspoons say, of jaggery, I would say not more than say 5 a day is good
That's
for
quite
a 3-year-old. Yeah, yeah.
generous. I
That's
think
quite generous. Yeah.
that comes from being a dadi and being considerate also to the child's requirements.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Ishi, coming back to our questions, and we will wind up in another 10 minutes. I had thought we'd keep this to 45 minutes because I call it that, that magic time. 45 minutes is a time that attention can be held and beyond that. But your subject is so interesting and relevant that it's difficult to disengage. And especially given that a couple of very important questions. So here is my little Noor, who is like a wound up toy. She's on the move and always wanting to, explore. When she is having her food, she is very demanding to have the phone with her. And her mother has tried to shift her to a television screen or even give her toys, but that is proving difficult. Also, with Mivan, he likes to watch the TV or have a phone when he's eating. And I know one thing, Mivan is such a cutie, disciplined little boy. Every morning for the virtual classes, he comes in his school uniform shirt and he sits like a little angel. And I suppose they're all angels, but with the parents, they have their own demands. So them on how to deal with this food and device difficulty.
I know, and I see it with my own baby here. So my suggestion to you is certainly that the child should be, this pairing that we do of food and the device gets very addictive. So I think a story, somebody doing something engaging with the child at that time, is one way of diverting the attention and keeping the. My experience says that when a child is not, if he is hungry, he should be eating. But this parent said that he did not eat for 4 days when they withdrew the
Yes,
device. Yeah.
yes,
So then there is an
yes.
appetite issue. Maybe the child is not so hungry. If the child is hungry, they
Hmm.
should have eaten. So we are forcing the child to eat by distracting the child, and that happened to me as a mother. I till I knew that my child had a wheat intolerance. He had a very poor appetite, and I had to use break all the rules to ensure that the child was eating. So somewhere, if it is persisting, it is saying something.
Yes.
So if the child is hungry, they would eat. So I think a little bit deeper thinking should be done here. And in general, I think because I'm trying to do it with my baby here, distracting through a story or doing engaging things during that time will be much better than a device. And you need to cut that cord.
Yes, absolutely. And let me tell you, as a parent of older children, if you don't get them used to that cord being cut, then they become really dependent and it becomes very difficult. As they get older, it becomes more difficult. For example, in our house, we have a rule that nobody is allowed to bring a device on the dining table. So no phones, not for the parents and not for the children.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that is something I think all of us have started eating anywhere also, especially with lockdown.
Yes.
It's very important to say we are now, this is our meal time. We are sitting at the table without our devices and everybody is going to participate in that. And I like Shambhavi's little chair where she gets trapped and I hope she's not in it longer than the time that she's on the online class. But it does make sense for a little while, not too long, but even for my kids, I had those little chairs that used to fit onto a normal dining chair, and then they would sit. So they learned to
Yeah.
eat with a spoon, chew their food. And most importantly, I think one thing we forget, and that is, think about it. If you're ever upset and eating, Ishi, correct me if I'm wrong, but that food actually becomes harmful when you're consuming it. Your throat is tight and you're agitated.
There is no two ways about it. It's totally true. We have dismissed these things as not important, but certainly the vibrations, the energy we are in affects what we ultimately happens to the food. And right from what you're talking about there, I have also now got convinced on a scientific level that a person who's making the food, the vibrations are important. I mean, a positive vibe, which is why a mom cooks the food versus a random person cooking the food makes a difference. And likewise, the vibrations in on the dining table, your mood, and a little blessing. This is a very probably the first time I'll be doing it in a public way. That saying a prayer before you eat, encourage your children to do that. You know, we all used to do it, or we were meant to do it, but somewhere with westernization and trying to be very cool and very modern, we have lost the value in these little things. And I think schools like you and parents, young parents, can really bring back these very, very precious habits. And a little bit of gratitude, a little bit of prayer just before you eat can really improve the vibrations of the meal that you're having.
So Ishi,
And this is scientific research, and if you want, the parents want to look at it, there is a Japanese researcher who has worked on crystals formed in water with different kinds of energies, different kinds of things said to the water. And so yeah, you need to really, we all need to know more than what we have known already about these things.
Hemant Bas teachers always said, be careful what you say in front of the children because they are living, breathing, growing, and taking in everything of the environment. So parents sometimes would talk, child, my child hasn't that. Never in front of the child because the child is going to react to it.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement is absolutely key. And Ishi, you shared that secret. All my life, my grandmother taught me, खाने को पहले भोग लगाओ. And on a little teaspoon, we used to put water and take around the food 3 times. So this is also a good distraction device. If you don't do it, but just to say, oh, thank you so much for this wonderful food, which is going to make me strong and tall, and is going to make my family healthy, and we're all going to be happy forever and ever and ever. Thank you. And then you can tip the water and start to eat. So it's just a way, or drop the water on the side of the plate. It's just a distractive thing, but it's like we begin. It's like the
Very
curtain.
meaningful.
And
Yeah.
even in the Western concept, they did say grace, It's just that everybody's into fast food and there are multiple agendas and chalo TV laka do.
Yeah.
They're all guilty of the same stuff. So we have
Yeah.
back
And I
to,
think Mother Nature is now getting it back, giving it back to us.
yes. So
Yeah.
let's not shun it. Let's not say lockdown is terrible. Let's say this is the most amazing opportunity for us to be with our children. Parents, we are loving teaching your children on the virtual learning program at the study school. Please stay connected and keep learning yourselves as well. Ishi, I can't thank you enough. This has been so diverse. You have really touched on so many different topics and answered the parents' questions. Oops, I forgot one before we go, and that is what to put in the tiffin.
Ah,
This
exactly
comes
what you.
from they're saying, please talk about tiffins.
Yeah, but I think it's so much common sense, and just ensure that you don't put biscuits which have been bought from outside and the rubbish. It's all that you want your child to eat, and you can add a little bit of treat to the child's, if there is a need for it, and just the stuff, healthy snacking. We've talked about it all this 1 hour, which means nuts, which means seeds, which means healthy bakery made at home, healthy breads, healthy cereals, and products, whatever your child likes to eat. And I think the child should look forward to his tiffin. And if the child is not eating, then again, wonder why. If the appetite is not as much, then of course, make it also make it presentable. That's another part of food.
Yes.
Making it interesting looking can also attract the child, like an adult, to eat more and to eat more happily. So I think a little bit of, but don't just leave it to the maid or the staff to do what they have to on a daily basis. That's not fair. So you can instruct your staff, work with your staff, add the right vibrations to the food, but be involved.
You said one very important thing, and that was the mother making the food. Sister Shivani, who is a fantastic orator and a great spirit, she said this once. And I panicked because in my house, I don't make the food. But I realized one thing, the person who does, we have such a good relationship. And every day, ever since that talk in particular, I consciously make an effort to speak to those who are cooking. Our kitchen is geared in such a way so that they have a beautiful view, a happy ecosystem to work in. So whether it's us or our staff, we just have to create the energy around us to be
Yes.
really important and really loving and nurturing. Thank you for being with us for the Study
I'm
Schools
so glad.
program. Thank you, Ishi, once again. And
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity. And you're really doing important work. All the best, parents. And all this information is in my books in case anyone wants to read further. There is Eating at Work, which is a latest diet doctor, and Is Wheat Killing You? These are all available on Kindle. So if you wish to, please go ahead.
thank you, Ishi. I benefited greatly from knowing you and interacting with you because food is a daily thing. So if every day someone can guide you, that's a tremendous help. Parents, let me tell you, next week we're going to talk about how do you make your child creative. And for that, I have Shalu Jindal who will be talking to us. She is the chairperson of the Flag Foundation. She was the chairperson of the Bal Bhavan, the National Bal Bhavan, for 5 years. She's a Kuchipuri dancer. All this, many of you may know. She's also the wife of Naveen Jindal, who's an industrialist. But all this aside, her Kuchipuri dance journey began at 35 plus or 34 plus. So, how does that work? How can you start something as specific and as elaborate as Indian classical dance at that age, be good at it, and do it at a professional level? So I think there'll be a lot to learn from that. She's also the mother of two children, and both her children have taken on. Her daughter dances like her son plays polo. Actually, there's a lot to learn, a lot to experience. I urge you to start sending in your questions. And thank you once again for being with us. God bless and stay connected.